Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and this video comes as a request from one of my subscribers who goes by Gigi Gecko, who is also a Catholic like me, so congratulations if you're watching this. He or she, haven't really watched their videos, so I don't really know the gender, suggested that I do a video on movies and what do I think are the Catholic messages in them. Well, I'm pretty terrible at reviewing movies, as you might have seen by my Soul Surfer review, but I do love Harry Potter, and Deathly Hallows is kind of my favorite book, so I figure, why not? I've reviewed the Harry Potter series as a whole on this channel before, so why not see if the books have as much amazing morality as, or the movies have as much amazing morality as the books do. So, I'm going to start movie by movie and sort of go from there. So the first movie has a surprisingly good message muddled by a really childish plot, albeit very faithful to the book plot. What I love about the first movie is it really does a great job of drawing you into the wonder of this new world, which, of course, we know. Actually, in case any of you are, no spoilers types of people, I would recommend you don't watch this movie, because I am going to get into details about all 7 of the main Harry Potter movies. So if there are certain details you don't want to know about in 6 and 7, you might want to stop watching. So it does a great job of bringing you into this wonderful new world. But on the other hand, this world isn't heaven per se. Even though Deathly Hallows hints that there is a heaven, because King's Cross is like Harry's representation of crossing from the bad world into the good world. It's more like this is the life of someone transformed into the life of a disciple. Now, you might be thinking that's a bit far-fetched, but there can be fallen disciples too, because look at Voldemort. He was one of the greatest wizards ever, and then he turned out to be one of the greatest evil wizards ever. You've also had Harry saying he felt like Hogwarts was more of his home than he had ever felt at the Dursleys. Harry became a disciple of magic, and the only reason he was able to use magic in the first place was because he had a Holly and Phoenix feather wand, which we all know the Phoenix is a symbol of Christ. More on that when we get to the second movie. Also, when Quirrell is trying to strangle Harry, Harry is able to turn Quirrell into ashes by simply touching him. At which point Harry asks Dumbledore, what exactly did I just do? And Dumbledore says, you have the love of your mother that protects you from being touched by evil. So therefore, just as we have the sacrifice of Christ within us through the Eucharist, Harry's mother's sacrifice is able to continue on through the fact that he has his mother's blood. So, saved by blood. How nice. Now, in the second book, there's not as much in-your-face morality until you get to the very end, when Harry is facing the basilisk. Traditionally, a snake is associated with the devil, or evil, as early as the very first book of the Bible, in the book of Genesis. The basilisk doesn't directly try to tempt Harry, but it does have a master who does, and that is Tom Riddle, who is described, at least in the books, as being exceedingly handsome. And I'm not a girl, I don't know how to judge, but I can guess that a lot of girls would probably be like, ooh, Christian Coulson is quite the dreamboat. Whatever, your choice. So, Riddle calls the basilisk, and Harry's immediate response is not to try to fight it, not to try to take his wand from Riddle by force, but to run, and eventually resign himself to the fact that he's not that great of a wizard, didn't even cast a single spell in the first movie, and he's just like, I don't know what to do. But then Fawkes, the Phoenix, comes to his rescue and pierces the eyes of the basilisk, which is an interesting allusion to the prophecy that God himself made to Adam and Eve after they had fallen from grace. He said that he would put offspring between the serpent and the woman, and that the woman would bear a son. It didn't say it in these exact words. That's why you gotta look at other Old Testament prophecies to fit all the pieces together. And that offspring would crush the head of the serpent. And while Fawkes doesn't exactly crush the basilisk, because the basilisk is like this gigantic serpent and Fawkes is just a tiny bird, it does pierce the eyes of the serpent so that the serpent is crippled. It's not able to fully do damage. But that doesn't mean the serpent is completely useless, because it eventually does find Harry and wounds Harry so much that if it hadn't been for the Fawkes' crying over Harry's wound, Harry would have died from the venom of the basilisk. Just like without Jesus pouring his water and blood on the cross, we would be killed by the venom of our own sins. Not to mention that it's only after Harry realizes that he needs help does the sword present itself to him. And the sword is sort of a symbol of the cross in the Harry Potter series, because not only is it described as looking like a cross in Deathly Hallows, but it can destroy Horcruxes, just like only through the power of the sacraments can a mortal sin be destroyed. Now, moving on to Prisoner of Azkaban. That's where things get weird, because I didn't really like Prisoner of Azkaban all that much. But one thing I have to give it is it did do a phenomenal job of portraying the Dementors, which J.K. Rowling herself has confessed that they represent despair and depression, because she was going through depression at the time of writing the third book. The Dementors force Harry to relive his worst memories and cause him to faint. But yet, when he's able to conjure a Patronus charm, he does so by filling himself up with the happiest memories that he has. But the thing with Harry is that the memory that he chooses when he produces his first Patronus isn't a memory that he's certain that he's had. It's a memory of his parents talking to him. Now, whether that was them talking to him as a baby and it just came to the surface 12 years later when he's a teenager, I don't know. But the symbolism here is very interesting, that Harry sees family as his way of protecting himself. You see, in the book, the memory that Harry chooses is the first time he found out that he was a wizard. So, in a sense, that he has found his home. That the Patronus, which is Latin for guardian, and sometimes even father. So, it only makes sense that in the movie, he literally sees his father and his mother talking to him. And so Harry equates that with, this is my joy. This is what will get me out of this hopelessness. Just like our Father can give us hope that there is another life. Moving on to Goblet of Fire, this is the movie where adolescent hormones take over so much that I'd be really shocked if you guys didn't see the underlying message. But this movie does a great job of emphasizing Harry's humility. A lot. Because Harry is the youngest Triwizard Champion in history. He's only 14 when everyone else is, like, at the very least 17. And so Harry needs a lot of help throughout all of these trials. Harry relies on the help of others, and very rarely does he use his own strength as a means of surviving a task. For the first task, Moody has to basically, like, tell him the solution, and even then, when he uses the summoning spell Accio, he has to just wait and hope that the broom will come to him. It doesn't just pop up in his hand. He has to wait for it. And not only that, but Harry doesn't even remember that that's what he's supposed to do until Hermione screams at him to take out his wand. Just like we as Christians are not asked to walk alone. We're asked to be in constant companionship with our friends. Hence why Harry is always accompanied by either Ron or Hermione or both when he's about to face a confrontation. He may eventually have to face it alone, but he never has to go towards it alone. He always has that guidance. Going into the second task, Harry shows even more humility and humanity, because once he gets to the 4 possessions that are tied up to the statue, instead of just trying to rescue Ron, which was technically in the rules, Harry went the extra mile and decided he wanted to rescue Gabrielle as well. So the judges decided to give him points for moral fiber, which is a good lesson for us Christians to have, because we are often asked, like, yeah, these are the bare minimum of Catholic requirements, but you could always go higher, because we're asked to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. So Harry is not only showing love to someone he knows, but he's realizing this is a perilous situation. He did not know that they would survive the task. He figured, I gotta save them. So he did. And the judges awarded him for it. Just like at the end of time, when we do acts of love, known as the acts of mercy in the Catholic Church, God will reward us accordingly for it. Then in the third task, Harry is within just running distance of the Triwizard Cup and about to win the tournament and have eternal glory. And yet, when he notices that the other boy, Cedric, is being eaten up by the maze, something which did not happen in the book, by the way, but that's a different subject, Harry turns away from the cup, turns toward the competition, and decides to help him up. Then when they finally get to the cup, Cedric's just like, Harry, you've earned it. You saved me. Take it. Harry decides instead to share the victory with Cedric. And yes, even though that ends up being fatal for Cedric, how could Harry have known that? He's only 14. He barely knows anything about the wizarding world. I don't think anyone in their right minds would argue that Harry was the one that killed Cedric. Far from it. But it goes to show that Harry's courage in the end was what got him out of the final task, which was facing Voldemort, which was the unintended finale of the tournament. Instead of cowering behind a gravestone, Harry decided that even though it was hopeless, he was going to face the enemy head on. And that mere act of willing defiance ended up helping Harry to survive in a duel and receive a golden shield of light that surrounded him, and his parents and loved ones appeared to support him, which goes to show us that we are never alone. We always have the communion of saints watching over us. And when that happens, they can aid us in our fight against the enemy. We Catholics believe in the power of intercession, which doesn't mean we pray to people that are in heaven. We ask them to help us. So in the same way, Harry's parents show up and they give Voldemort enough of a distraction so that while he's trying to wipe away all the smoke, that gives Harry just enough time to get back to Cedric's body and summon the Triwizard Cup so that he can warp back to Hogwarts. The fifth movie is the one that I think hits you over the head the most with morals, because it's the only movie that wasn't written by Steve Kloves, who was the screenwriter. This movie had so many Catholic undertones to it that it almost set my expectations a little bit too high for the final two movies. Basically, oh man, where do I even begin here? Possibly my favorite scenes were, one of them was where Harry and Sirius were talking, and Harry was concerned that he was becoming bad. And Sirius said, the world isn't made into good people and Death Eaters. We all have a bit of light and dark inside us. But the part that matters is the part we choose to act on. And that is like, whoa, that's amazing theology there. Because the thing about sin is, in order for something to be classified as a sin, it has to be willing. You have to make a choice to do something bad. So, even though there are good people in the world and there are bad people, there are still bad people that can make good choices and good people that can make bad choices. But what's defined is what we choose to do. We can't necessarily control our thoughts. Sometimes, for example, a lustful thought might pop into our minds that we don't want. But what we can say is, I'm going to choose not to act on this. Or I'm going to choose not to take this drug. Or I'm going to choose not to kill this person that I have a grudge against. And this is very much reflected when Harry finally faces off against Voldemort. Or at least tries, epically fails, and then Voldemort tries to possess Harry's mind. While it's true that Harry did receive lessons from Snape that taught him to close his mind and get rid of all of his emotions, in the end it turned out that that was the exact opposite thing that Harry needed to do. Snape thought that if Harry wasn't thinking about anything, that would shut out Voldemort. But what ended up eventually saving Harry from being possessed was when he saw his friends, and he realized that Voldemort was living without love. And so Harry said, I feel sorry for you because you don't have love and you don't have friends. So in the same way, again, it's that aspect of community. Harry realizes he can't do it alone. He couldn't even land a single blow on Voldemort, so Dumbledore had to take over the duel for him. And his friends helped him when he was at the Ministry. He couldn't just go marching in alone. He needed them to use their very strengths to help him out. And that the mere fact that Harry feels pity on Voldemort is what's so essential going into the 7th book. Admittedly, it's not shown that way in the movies, but we'll get to that. Half-Blood Prince is probably where the morality shows the least out of all the movies, because it's my least favorite movie, but it was one of my favorite books, so it's really a shame that they butchered a classic so much. Instead of focusing on what Harry needs to do to win this war, it's basically just a bunch of teenage drama all over the place, and even though there are some touching scenes here and there, like when Harry is comforting Hermione over Ron being a jerk to her, and since I was going through depression at the time, that was a really great scene for me to watch, because I was like, yeah, I'd like to know that I'm not the only person that feels the same way about being betrayed by someone I love. Basically, the closest Half-Blood Prince comes to objective morality are in 2 scenes, really. One is where Slughorn is talking about what the condition is to create a Horcrux, and Tom Riddle sums it up in one word: murder. And it's very clear that because you know that Voldemort is the villain, and he's trying to cheat death, he's going to murder other people so that he can live longer. And while that may extend someone's life, it also kills their soul. It said that Voldemort split his soul into 7, and there are 7 deadly sins in the Catholic Church. So it basically meant that Voldemort was so on the path of evil that had he not repented, he would have gone to hell, or whatever the Harry Potter universe's version of that was. The other scene, and surprisingly this wasn't in the book, and I thought it was actually a pretty well done scene. After Hagrid passes out from being too drunk, Harry and Slughorn are inside Hagrid's cabin, and Slughorn tells the story about how Harry's mother, when she was a student, left him a bowl with a fish, and the fish turned into a lily. But as soon as Lily and her husband James were killed, the lily vanished. So Harry said that unless you want my mother's sacrifice to be in vain, you will tell me what Tom Riddle told you in your office. And that's when Slughorn willingly hands Harry the keys to victory. And in both the movies and the books, Harry never holds a grudge against Slughorn ever again. And oh my gosh, Harry Potter, I can't even fathom how much mercy that would take. I don't even have that much mercy. When people hurt me, I tend to talk about it for years, sometimes decades. But Harry, he never holds anything against Slughorn, even when he's miserable, even when he's nearly starving in Deathly Hallows. He doesn't play blame. He doesn't hold on to that accumulative, "Ugh, Slughorn, if you hadn't screwed up, then I wouldn't be on this messed up journey." Well, technically he blames it all on Dumbledore. And for good reason, because Dumbledore tells Harry even less in the movies than he does in the books. So by the time we get to Deathly Hallows, Harry is forced to go on this journey through the wilderness because he decides to drop out of Hogwarts and continue the quest to find the Horcruxes to defeat Voldemort. In the meantime, Harry experiences betrayal in the form of Ron leaving him, but yet it's a ball of light that guides Ron back to Hermione, just like sometimes the Holy Spirit gives this still, calm voice in our ears that says, "You should go back." Harry ends up following a silver doe to help him reach the Sword of Gryffindor, just like the Blessed Mother is often represented as a doe because Christ is a stag and the doe is the female version of a stag. The Blessed Mother, we don't worship her, but she leads us to Christ. Of course, it's more powerful in the book, because the book says the first thing Harry sees after the silver doe vanishes is a small silver cross, and he gets down on his knees to look at the cross further. Harry was led to the cross, but in order for Harry to be properly purified, Harry had to strip off everything that was holding him back. In the same way, we have to confess all of our sins and say we are truly sorry. But yet, Harry kept the Horcrux on. So Harry was holding back one of those sins that was keeping him from God, and that sin nearly choked him to death. And it wasn't until Ron showed up and saved Harry that Harry was able to be rid of the Horcrux. Just as it's pretty much impossible for us to fight sin unless we have a friend or someone helping us out. Ron had to face his worst fears, and he was able to do that by hearing Harry shout, "Don't listen to his lies! Kill it!" Also, when Voldemort tries to kill Harry, it's because of his mother's blood. Of course, this is explained in the books. It's not explained in the movies, which is really unfortunate. That because Voldemort took Harry's blood in the graveyard, that blood was the sacrifice that allowed Harry to live. So basically, Harry had a part of him, which was a part of his mother, inside Voldemort. So as long as he lived, Harry lived. Harry appeared in King's Cross Station, which King's Cross, I mean, Jesus died on a cross and he was the king of the Jews. So the parallel there is amazing. That Harry had the opportunity to go on to a better life, but yet he chose to stay and fight for his friends. And in the end, the fact that he did not try to kill, but he only tried to disarm, was what killed Voldemort. While it may have looked like Harry killed Voldemort in the movie, in the book it's explained that because Harry took Draco's wand, therefore the wand in Voldemort's hand recognized Harry as its master. So technically, Voldemort, in a sense, committed suicide. Because he cast the curse to kill Harry, but because the wand Voldemort was using recognized Harry as its master, the wand technically cast the killing curse at Voldemort himself. And then, at the very end of the movie, Ron's like, "You have the most powerful wand in the world, Harry. What are you going to do with it?" Harry snaps the wand, because he realizes that power can be abused. Harry doesn't want the power. He doesn't want glory. That's why people don't clap to see him. The only thing he gets is a hug from Hagrid and some smiley faces. Otherwise, everyone's just sitting around in the hall, just happy to be alive. And that's all Harry wants. He doesn't want to be the most popular person ever. He doesn't want people chanting his name and saying, "You saved us, Harry! You're the savior of the wizarding world!" Instead, Harry's just like, "It's another day at school. I'm just happy to be alive." And that's a great message of humility. Now, do I think the Harry Potter movies are perfect? Absolutely not. I think there definitely could have been much more clothing on the Harry and Hermione that came out of the locket. I don't think Ron should have cheated on Hermione that badly in the 6th movie. Prisoner of Azkaban was just so abysmal with all of its crazy decision-making choices. And I do wish that Harry had more negative consequences for breaking some of the rules, when some of them weren't even for noble reasons. Like when Harry snuck into Hogsmeade. That was not noble. Harry was just like, "My friends are getting to go on this cool field trip, and I can't, so I'm just going to sneak out of the school." Well, in the end, of course, we learn that that comes with a terrible price. That Harry nearly gets caught by Malfoy, and then the map that he has, Snape almost catches him using that. But it's not emphasized enough. Basically, Harry's allowed to get away with a lot. But on the other hand, that's what makes Harry realistic. Is in the first couple of movies, Harry is portrayed as very innocent, despite having a very abusive family. But yet, as the series went along, Rowling had to show that Harry was at least subtly affected by this abuse. And so that led to moments of rebellion where Harry's like, "I'm tired of being locked up under the stairs. I'm tired of being told I can't do anything. So I'm going to rebel." I'm not saying what Harry did was right, but I am saying what he did was human. But because of his mother's love, Harry didn't become totally corrupt like the Dursleys did. Harry fought past his oppression. Harry fought past his suffering and his near starvation. He didn't stoop to their level. Harry never sought out revenge against the Dursleys. He didn't go back and try to kill them when he had all the power of being a 17-year-old wizard that could fully do magic. Instead, he allowed the Dursleys to go into hiding. So Harry decided to show mercy instead of vengeance. So overall, Harry Potter is a very real, albeit flawed, human being that shows amazing capacities of mercy, forgiveness, humility, and most importantly, love. Because love is the most powerful magic of all, if you ever watched Once Upon a Time. With that, thank you very much for watching, and until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and keep on loving. Bye!